As travel becomes more connected to purpose, identity, and really driven to intent, we're seeing our brands shift away from being destination based and being more about what a person is looking for in that experience itself. It's so important for us to understand the why behind a consumer and what they're trying to do with travel so that a message can be authentically tied to that purpose and be more personalized where it makes most sense to that person. Of course, there's always an argument for broad scale and ensuring that there's reach against a more hallmark message. But more and more, we're seeing, of course, as with other advertisers, a more targeted approach to reach audience in a precise way.
Bre, as you alluded to in those high intent moments, traveler media reaches people when they're highly engaged and open to discovery. What makes that environment so valuable compared to more traditional media channels?
Traveler media has a really unique position in the marketplace because when we think about the unique travel experience and the booking process that a consumer goes through, it's not every day that a consumer is just booking. There's a long process that goes around that experience. They're researching, they're understanding what needs to go into that travel process for their family, what are the logistics behind it, what are the costs behind it, and what value will that bring for that particular person. Traveler media is really at an interesting intersection because someone is already in the mindset they're dreaming, they're thinking about travel, and they're really getting ready to spend. So they're at a point in which their perception can be challenged and shifted in a very unique way. You're not at the very beginning of the journey. You're also most of the time not at the very end of the journey, but sometimes in just the right place for a brand to be able to speak to a consumer in a way that can shift that consumer's perception of that brand for a lifetime.
Bre, I like that you brought up logistics as part of the thinking that advertisers need to work on when it comes to understanding travel. From concerts and sporting events to even milestone family trips, travel is increasingly tied to those cultural moments, as you mentioned. How should marketers think about showing up authentically in those experiences, though?
Yep, I think it's a really interesting question. Authenticity has been part of the marketing jargon for so long now, but it really means something to our consumers. And especially in a world where we're thinking about the balance of precision and reach and scale and targetedness towards a specific person. I think what's most important for travel is getting underneath the why. Why is that person traveling? What are they looking to accomplish within that experience? Is it a multi-generational experience? Is it something that they've been dreaming about, something that's been on their bucket list for years and years and years? That booking experience and that travel experience will be so different based off of what the intent is with why. And it's so important a brand understands what they're offering to that consumer. What is it that they bring forward and what can show in messaging that will really resonate to a specific traveler? And how can a brand use that? So it's important that a brand plays in that space, that a consumer knows them for, and be anchored in the joy and the experience that they can bring forward.
Bre, along with the idea of identity being such a big part of travel, AI is becoming an evolving way of also integrating with travel and pretty much everything else. Wanted to know, with just focusing on personalization and the evolution of AI, how are agencies balancing precision targeting with the need to create emotional human connections?
Right. Underneath that, there's an age-old question of precision versus scale, reach versus targeted approach, and of course AI is the new way in which all of this is happening. So I think the advent of advertising is really the utilization of AI to create bespoke experiences that make most sense for a consumer, while also balancing a more human touch. So there's literature and some studies around what human nature will bring to strategy and how that comes through in the age of AI and how important that is for brands to harness. When we think about what this all looks like, there's a role for each, right? There's never not going to be a role for your hero campaign, for your big brand awareness push and what that looks like. And there's also always going to be a role for precision and ensuring that you're reaching the right person at the right time. That's advertising at its very core. So there's a role for each, and making sure that advertisers are balancing both of those approaches are the keys to success.
Bre, I also wanted to talk about the role of travel media itself. It's often described as additive to the media mix, not a replacement. where are you seeing it drive the most incremental value for brands today?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we've noticed is that there's been a 30% increase in spend in travel networks year over year. And that stat speaks for itself. Something is working because there's more and more spend going into the space. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of travel networks being at the core of the decision-making process. They sit at such an interesting moment in time where a consumer is ready to make a decision and ready to be influenced. So there's really two tracks when we think about how we're looking at travel media networks and in endemic spaces. We're looking to influence the undecided who might need a perception shift in terms of the brands that we're talking about and what they could bring to them. Or we're looking at, and the proof is in the pudding here, of someone who's been recently booked. So understanding what that person has booked with the brand, what experiences they're looking for, because I'm sure we can all relate to this. If you've been on vacation, you're thinking about your next vacation, and you're thinking about where you want to go next, and what better time to put our brands in front of those vacationers when they're already in love with the experience that they're having with said brand.